6-year-old Emma was smiling for the first time since losing her parents. She was at Elvis's concert. When Elvis brought her on stage, the words he spoke and the gesture he made brought 15,000 people to tears. The Las Vegas Hilton's showrooms sparkled with anticipation on a cold December evening in 1975, as fans from across the country gathered to witness Elvis Presley's final shows of the year. The venue was decorated with festive holiday touches that added warmth to the already intimate atmosphere, creating the perfect setting for what would become one of the most emotionally powerful concerts in Elvis's career. Among the 15,000 attendees that night was a small figure who stood out not for her excitement, but for her solitude. 6-year-old Emma Parker sat alone in the third row, her tiny frame dwarfed by the adult-sized seat, clutching a worn teddy bear that had seen better days. Her presence was both heartbreaking and remarkable. A child so young attending such an event by herself was unusual enough to draw concerned glances from nearby concertgoers. Emma's story was one of recent tragedy and resilience that few in the audience could have imagined. Just 3 months earlier, her parents, David and Susan Parker, had been killed in a car accident while returning from a weekend getaway. The collision with a drunk driver had instantly orphaned Emma, leaving her in the care of St. Mary's Children's Home in Las Vegas, where she had struggled to adapt to her new reality. Before the accident, Emma had been a bright, talkative child who loved music and dancing. Her parents had often played Elvis's records at home, and Emma had developed a deep attachment to his voice and songs. During the darkest days following her parents' death, when she refused to speak or engage with the social workers and other children at the orphanage, the only thing that seemed to bring her any comfort was listening to Elvis's music. Sister Margaret, the kind nun who supervised Emma's care at St. Mary's, had noticed that the child would stop crying and sit quietly whenever Elvis's songs played on the radio. Recognizing music as a potential pathway to healing, she had acquired several Elvis albums and made them available to Emma whenever she needed emotional support. The ticket to Elvis's concert had come about through an extraordinary act of kindness from an unlikely source. Dr. Robert Chen, a local pediatrician who volunteered at the orphanage, had purchased season tickets to Elvis's Las Vegas residency as a Christmas gift for his wife. When she became ill and couldn't attend the final show, Dr. Chen remembered Emma's connection to Elvis's music and made a decision that would change the child's life forever. "I think this little girl needs to see Elvis more than anyone else," he had told Sister Margaret when he offered Emma the ticket. The nun had initially been hesitant about allowing such a young child to attend a late-night concert alone, but Dr. Chen assured her that he would arrange for supervision and that the experience might be exactly what Emma needed to begin healing. The day of the concert had been carefully planned to ensure Emma's safety and comfort. Sister Margaret had helped Emma choose her best dress, a simple blue frock that her mother had bought for her 6th birthday just weeks before the accident. The dress was one of the few possessions Emma had been able to keep from her former life, and wearing it made her feel closer to her parents' memory. Dr. Chen had arranged for Emma to be escorted to the venue by Maria Santos, a young nurse from his practice who had volunteered to supervise the child during the concert. Maria was a compassionate woman in her 20s who had grown up in foster care herself and understood the importance of small gestures of kindness in a child's life. The journey to the Las Vegas Hilton had been Emma's first real venture outside the orphanage since her parents' death. As their taxi pulled up to the glittering entrance of the hotel, Emma pressed her face against the window, taking in the bright lights and bustling crowds with wide eyes that reflected both wonder and apprehension. Maria noticed Emma's mixture of excitement and nervousness as they made their way through the hotel's lavish lobby toward the showroom. "Are you excited to see Elvis?" she asked gently, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. Emma nodded solemnly but didn't speak. She had barely uttered a word since the tragedy, communicating mostly through gestures and expressions. Inside the showroom, Maria helped Emma settle into her seat, which happened to be remarkably close to the stage due to Dr. Chen's premium tickets. The proximity to where Elvis would soon perform was both thrilling and slightly overwhelming for Emma, who clutched her teddy bear more tightly as the venue filled with excited adults around her. As the lights dimmed and the crowd's anticipation reached its peak, Emma found herself smiling for the first time in months. The magical atmosphere of the concert hall, combined with the knowledge that she was about to see the person whose voice had comforted her through her darkest hours, created a moment of genuine happiness that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. When Elvis took the stage in his signature white jumpsuit, adorned with intricate beadwork that caught the stage lights like stars, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Emma watched in fascination as her musical hero commanded the stage with the charisma and energy that had made him a global icon. For the first time since her tragedy, she felt a connection to joy and wonder that transcended her grief. Elvis opened with several of his classic hits, his voice filling the venue with the rich, powerful tones that had captivated audiences for decades. Emma sat transfixed, her small hands gripping the edge of her seat as she watched every movement and listened to every note with an intensity that was remarkable for such a young child. The audience around Emma was caught up in the typical excitement of an Elvis concert, singing along to familiar songs and cheering enthusiastically after each number. However, several people near Emma began to notice the small girl sitting alone, her obvious youth and solitude making her stand out among the predominantly adult crowd. As the concert progressed, Elvis moved through his repertoire with the practiced ease of a master performer. He engaged with different sections of the audience, sharing stories between songs and creating the intimate connection with his fans that had always been a hallmark of his live performances. It was during one of these moments of audience interaction that Elvis's attention was drawn to the unusual sight of a small child sitting alone in the front section. Elvis had always possessed a remarkable ability to spot individual faces in even the largest crowds, and his natural empathy made him particularly sensitive to anyone who seemed to be in distress or need. When his gaze fell upon Emma, something about her demeanor and obvious youth triggered his protective instincts and his genuine concern for his fans' well-being. From the stage, Elvis could see that Emma was clearly very young to be at such an event, and her solitary presence suggested circumstances that concerned him. Her body language, the way she held her teddy bear, her focused attention on his performance, and something indefinable about her expression, communicated to Elvis that this was a child who had experienced something difficult. During a brief instrumental break between songs, Elvis walked to the edge of the stage closest to where Emma was sitting. His movement toward her section of the audience caused a ripple of excitement among nearby fans, many of whom assumed he was simply engaging in his typical audience interaction. However, Elvis's focus was entirely on Emma, and he found himself moved by the sight of such a young child attending his concert alone. There was something about her presence that touched him deeply. Perhaps it was her obvious love for his music, her youth, or simply the protective instincts that his own experience as a father had developed. "Hello there, sweetheart," Elvis said, his voice carrying clearly through his microphone to the entire audience. "What's your name?" His tone was gentle and warm, the same voice that had comforted Emma through her darkest nights at the orphanage, but now directed personally toward her. Emma looked up at Elvis with wide eyes, overwhelmed by the reality that her hero was speaking directly to her. For a moment, she seemed frozen by the magnitude of the moment, unable to process that Elvis Presley himself was acknowledging her presence among thousands of other people. Maria, who had been sitting beside Emma, gently encouraged her to respond. "Go ahead, honey. Tell Elvis your name." Her voice was supportive and reassuring, helping Emma navigate this unexpected interaction with the person she most admired in the world. "Emma," the child whispered, her voice so quiet that it barely reached Elvis despite the excellent acoustics of the venue. It was the first word she had spoken clearly in weeks, and the significance of the moment was not lost on Maria, who felt tears forming in her eyes as she witnessed this breakthrough. Elvis smiled warmly at Emma's response, and something in his expression suggested that he sensed there was more to her story than what was immediately apparent. His years of experience with fans had given him an intuitive ability to recognize when someone was dealing with pain or difficulty, and Emma's demeanor triggered every protective instinct he possessed.
What Elvis did next surprised everyone in the venue, including his own band members and stage crew.
Instead of simply acknowledging Emma and moving on with his performance, he made a decision that would transform the evening from a typical concert into something much more meaningful and emotional. "Emma, would you like to come up here and keep me company for a song?" Elvis asked, extending his hand toward her with the same gentle warmth he might show his own daughter. The invitation was delivered with such sincerity and kindness that it immediately communicated to everyone present that this was not a publicity stunt or planned interaction, but a genuine gesture of compassion. The audience held its collective breath as they witnessed this unprecedented moment. Elvis concerts were known for their energy and spectacle, but this intimate gesture toward a young child represented something different, a demonstration of the man behind the performer and his authentic care for his fans. Emma looked at Elvis with a mixture of disbelief and longing, unable to quite process that she was being invited to join her hero on stage. Maria squeezed her hand gently and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Elvis wants to meet you." The encouragement helped Emma find the courage to stand up, though she remained clutched to her teddy bear as if it were a lifeline. Elvis personally came down from the stage to escort Emma, recognizing that asking such a young child to navigate the transition alone would be inappropriate and potentially frightening. As he approached her, the venue fell into an unusual quiet, with 15,000 people focusing their attention on this gentle interaction between a global superstar and a small, obviously vulnerable child. "Don't be afraid," Elvis said softly as he reached Emma's seat. "I just thought you might like to see what it looks like from up there." His voice carried the same warmth and reassurance that had made him beloved by millions, but now it was focused entirely on comforting one scared little girl. When Elvis gently took Emma's hand and led her toward the stage, the emotional impact on the audience was immediate and profound. Many people found themselves moved to tears by the tenderness of the gesture and the obvious care Elvis was showing toward this young fan. The sight of the towering performer walking slowly to accommodate Emma's small steps created an image that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. Once on stage, Elvis positioned Emma beside him near the center, where she would be visible to the entire audience, but also feel safe under his protection. The stage lights, which might have been overwhelming for a small child, seemed to create a magical atmosphere that transformed Emma's nervousness into wonder. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis announced to the audience, his arm gently placed on Emma's shoulder, "I'd like you to meet my friend Emma. She's 6 years old and she loves music just as much as any of us." His introduction was simple but dignified, treating Emma with the same respect he would show any honored guest. The audience responded with warm applause and encouraging cheers, creating an atmosphere of support and acceptance that helped Emma feel welcome, despite being in such an unusual and potentially overwhelming situation. Elvis's ability to manage the crowd's energy and create a safe space for Emma demonstrated his skill, not just as a performer, but as a person who genuinely cared about others' well-being. Emma stood beside Elvis, still clutching her teddy bear, and for the first time since her parents' death, she felt truly safe and cared for. The man whose voice had provided comfort during her darkest hours was now physically present, offering protection and kindness that reminded her of the love she had lost. Elvis knelt down beside Emma so they could speak at the same eye level, his action creating an intimate moment within the grand scale of the concert hall. "Emma, would you like me to sing a special song just for you?" he asked, his voice gentle but clearly audible to the audience through the microphone system. What happened next created one of the most emotionally powerful moments in concert history. Elvis began to sing "Love Me Tender," one of his most beloved ballads, but he sang it directly to Emma with a tenderness and sincerity that transformed the familiar song into something entirely new and profoundly moving. As Elvis's voice filled the venue with the gentle melody, Emma looked up at him with an expression of pure wonder and contentment. For the first time since losing her parents, she felt the presence of unconditional love and care that every child deserves. The song that had comforted her through lonely nights at the orphanage was now being sung personally to her by the man who had created it. The audience watched in rapt silence, many openly weeping as they witnessed this extraordinary demonstration of compassion and human connection. The typical excitement of an Elvis concert had been replaced by something much deeper, a shared experience of witnessing genuine love and kindness that transcended entertainment and touched the fundamental human need for connection and care. During the song, something remarkable happened. Emma began to sing along softly, her small voice joining Elvis's powerful vocals in a duet that no one present would ever forget. It was the first time she had sung since her parents' death, and the significance of the moment was not lost on anyone who witnessed it. Elvis heard Emma's voice and smiled warmly, encouraging her participation without making her feel self-conscious or pressured. His ability to create a space where she felt safe enough to express herself musically represented a breakthrough that months of therapy and counseling had been unable to achieve. As the song concluded, Elvis gently took Emma's hand and addressed the audience once more. "Sometimes music brings us exactly what we need when we need it most," he said, his words carrying a weight of meaning that resonated throughout the venue. Emma reminds us all that love and kindness are the most important things we can share with each other. Before returning Emma to her seat, Elvis made a gesture that would have lasting implications for both their lives. He knelt down beside her once more and spoke quietly, though his words were picked up by the sensitive microphone system and heard throughout the venue. "Emma, I want you to know something very important," Elvis said, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "Your parents may not be here anymore, but you are never alone. You have people who care about you, and you always will. And whenever you hear my music, I want you to remember that someone thinks you're very special." The simplicity and sincerity of Elvis's words created a moment of profound emotional impact that affected everyone present. Many audience members were openly crying, moved by the demonstration of compassion they were witnessing and the obvious healing effect it was having on Emma. Elvis then did something that surprised even his closest associates. He removed one of his signature scarves, a piece of stage costume that fans typically treasured as souvenirs, and gently tied it around Emma's wrist like a bracelet. "This is so you'll always remember tonight," he told her, "and so you'll know that Elvis Presley thinks you're one of the most important people in the world." The gesture was both symbolic and practical, providing Emma with a tangible reminder of this extraordinary evening and the kindness she had experienced. More importantly, it represented Elvis's commitment to ensuring that this interaction was meaningful and lasting rather than simply a momentary diversion. As Elvis prepared to escort Emma back to her seat, she surprised everyone by speaking clearly for the first time all evening. "Thank you, Elvis," she said, her voice carrying throughout the venue through the microphone system. "I love you too." The emotional impact of Emma's words was immediate and overwhelming. The audience erupted in applause and tears, recognizing that they had just witnessed a moment of profound healing and human connection that transcended typical entertainment experiences. The remainder of Elvis's concert was unlike any other performance in his career. The emotional resonance of his interaction with Emma had transformed the entire atmosphere of the venue, creating a sense of community and shared humanity that elevated every subsequent song. The audience was no longer simply watching a show. They were participating in a collective experience of compassion and healing. Elvis himself seemed energized and inspired by his encounter with Emma, performing with a passion and emotional depth that impressed even his longtime band members. Every song seemed to carry additional meaning. Every gesture appeared more heartfelt, and the connection between performer and audience reached levels that few concerts ever achieve. Emma returned to her seat beside Maria, but she was fundamentally changed by her experience on stage. The small girl who had been withdrawn and silent since her parents' death was now animated and engaged, talking excitedly about her interaction with Elvis and showing off the scarf he had given her to everyone around her. Maria observed Emma's transformation with amazement and gratitude, recognizing that something profound had occurred that went far beyond simple entertainment. The child who had barely spoken in months was now expressing herself freely, and the joy that had been absent from her life was beginning to return. The audience members who had witnessed Emma's time on stage found themselves approaching Maria and Emma during intermission, sharing their own emotional responses to what they had seen and expressing their support for the young girl. Complete strangers offered words of encouragement,
and shared their own stories of loss and healing, creating an impromptu community of care around Emma. In the days and weeks following the concert, Emma's behavior at the orphanage underwent a dramatic transformation. The withdrawn, silent child, who had worried her caregivers, was replaced by a girl who sang Elvis songs throughout the day, talked enthusiastically about her experience, and began engaging more actively with the other children and staff. Sister Margaret documented Emma's progress carefully, recognizing that the child's interaction with Elvis had achieved a therapeutic breakthrough that traditional counseling approaches had been unable to accomplish. Emma's willingness to communicate, her renewed interest in activities, and her ability to express emotion all dated back to that evening at the Las Vegas Hilton. The story of Emma's experience spread throughout Las Vegas and beyond, becoming part of Elvis lore and cementing his reputation as someone who genuinely cared about his fans' well-being. Media coverage of the event focused on the compassionate gesture and its impact on a grieving child, adding another dimension to Elvis's public image. More importantly for Emma's future, the publicity surrounding her story attracted the attention of potential adoptive families who were moved by her circumstances and her resilience. Within 6 months of the concert, Emma had been placed with a loving family who understood her history and were committed to continuing the healing process that Elvis had begun. The scarf that Elvis had given Emma became one of her most treasured possessions, a tangible reminder of the night when kindness from a stranger had helped restore her faith in human goodness. She kept it carefully preserved and would often hold it when she missed her original parents or needed comfort during difficult times. For Elvis, the encounter with Emma represented something significant in his own life and career. In his later interviews, he often spoke about that evening as one of the most meaningful experiences he had ever had as a performer. The ability to directly impact a child's healing process through music and kindness reinforced his understanding of the power and responsibility that came with his platform. Elvis had always been known for his charitable work and his genuine care for his fans, but the interaction with Emma demonstrated these qualities in their purest form. There was no publicity benefit, no calculated image management, simply a spontaneous act of compassion that reflected his authentic character. The experience also reminded Elvis of his own connection to music as a source of comfort and healing. Having grown up in difficult circumstances himself, he understood the power that songs could have to provide solace during dark times. Seeing that same power help Emma begin to heal reinforced his commitment to using his gifts in service of others. Years later, Elvis would occasionally ask about Emma during his Las Vegas residencies, checking on her progress and expressing satisfaction that their brief encounter had contributed to positive changes in her life. These inquiries demonstrated that his interest in her well-being extended far beyond the single evening they had shared. Emma Parker grew up to become a music therapist, dedicating her career to using music as a tool for healing and emotional recovery. Her choice of profession was directly influenced by her experience with Elvis and her understanding of how powerfully music could impact someone's emotional state and recovery process. In her work with children who had experienced trauma, Emma often shared her own story as an example of how healing was possible and how small acts of kindness could have lasting impact. She became particularly skilled at working with children who had lost parents, understanding their grief from personal experience and offering hope based on her own recovery. Emma never forgot the evening she spent on stage with Elvis, and she often credited that experience with teaching her the importance of compassion, the power of music, and the difference that one person's kindness could make in another's life. The scarf Elvis had given her remained displayed in her office as a reminder of these lessons. Throughout her adult life, Emma maintained contact with Sister Margaret and her Chen and others who had made her concert experience possible. She expressed gratitude for the chain of kindness that had led to her healing and worked to create similar opportunities for other children in need. The story of Emma and Elvis became a case study in music therapy programs, demonstrating the potential for musical experiences to create breakthrough moments in healing and recovery. Emma's professional work was informed by both her personal experience
and her academic training, making her uniquely qualified to help others find healing through music. The story of Elvis bringing 6-year-old Emma on stage became one of the most beloved anecdotes in Elvis lore, representing the best qualities of his character and his genuine care for his fans. It demonstrated that beneath the rhinestone jumpsuits and larger-than-life persona was a person with authentic compassion and the wisdom to recognize when someone needed help. For those who witnessed the event, it remained a defining memory that illustrated the power of music and kindness to create healing and hope. Many described it as the most meaningful concert experience of their lives, not because of the musical performance, but because of the human drama and compassion they had observed. The incident also contributed to broader conversations about the therapeutic power of music and the importance of treating children's grief with sensitivity and creativity. Emma's story became an example of how unconventional approaches to healing could sometimes achieve results that traditional methods could not. Today, the story continues to inspire people who hear it, serving as a reminder that opportunities to help others appear in unexpected moments and that small gestures of kindness can have profound and lasting impacts. Elvis's decision to bring Emma on stage showed that true greatness is measured not just by talent or success, but by how we treat the most vulnerable members of our society. The evening also demonstrated that healing often occurs through connection and community rather than isolation, and that sometimes the most powerful therapy is simply knowing that someone cares. Elvis's interaction with Emma provided both of these elements, creating a moment of transformation that would influence both their lives and the lives of everyone who witnessed it.